Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the second session of the NMRG plenary meeting. So I'm Jérôme François. I'm co-chairing the session with my colleague Laurent Ciavaglia. Just some requests. So for the remote participant, keep video and your mic off when you're not speaking or presenting. And for on-site participant, it's very important that you scan the QR code here, or that is also turning on the blue sheet, or that you log in directly into the Meeteco platform in order to have your participation recorded. And of course, if you're on site, please do not use audio and video. So let me remind you also the notwell. So just to remind that as IETF, we follow the IETF intellectual property right disclosure rules, so that you can read on this slide. So please really have a look on that. It's particularly very important if some of your work or ideas you share are protecting some patents to disclose it as well. Okay, so just also to remind you that the meeting is live stream and it's recorded. So if you do not want to be recorded, you please you need to have the this lanyard that you do not consent to appear in a recording of photographs during the IETF. But also, of course, if you want to speak to the mic, you have to be aware that this will be recorded and that you consent to be recorded in that case. The same for remote participant, of course. Okay, also very important, please read this slide regarding the privacy and code of conduct. Of course, we need to be respectful to each other. So please really look at this, the documents that are mentioned here. And of course, if you have any concern or question, here you have also the related link that you can go to consult. Also, let me remind you that we are NMRG is a research group, so it's part of IETF. IETF conducts research. It's not the main purpose is not to develop standard. Of course, we can publish some RFC as informational RFC, but the main goal is really to focus on long-term research in parallel, of course, of the IETF, which is a parallel organization of the IETF. Some links that have been already shared on the mailing list. Okay, so as you know, this is a second plenary meeting of this week, and we have already one on Tuesday dedicated to a network digital twin. So the objective of the meeting today, as you probably for those who are participating in the mailing list, is to discuss on the different topics we want to address in the group. So just a very quick remind, the question I've shared with you was to try to, with the objective to define the important topic we want to address, or we want to address, the type of outcome we would like to have in the research group. So the main idea is that we will go regarding the different topics that we have in the research group. So we have 4 topics: green networking, intent-based networking, data management, and then artificial intelligence. Knowing that we have discussed about network digital twin on the Tuesday session, so we'll not go back to this topic today. So we will go for each of this topic, and with some inviting or some presentations that has been proposed also to fuel the discussion regarding the topics and the opportunities and challenge. one on green networking and one data management. And then we'll also, as chair, provide you some views or concluding remarks on what you have, what we have discussed on the mailing list, but also on the side meeting we had yesterday. Okay, so maybe a disclaimer. In the slides that you will see now, we try to capture the different views or opinions we have received. So it's not our opinion as chairs. We just try to be really transparent to also summarize all the views we have received. So we can start with green networking, but I would like to invite Alex first to present the draft and the questions that he has. We have 5 minutes.
5 minutes, all right.
Yeah.
Okay, so hello everyone. So 5 minutes for this draft challenges and opportunities in green networking. Next slide, please. So this work was presented actually in the past year before. It was adopted after the last IETF, so thank you. Basically, this is now the newly rolled research group document. The purpose again was to analyze challenges and opportunities in green, sustainable, energy efficient, carbon neutral, etc. networking, and basically looking at how reducing the carbon footprint to net zero, how this challenge extends to network technology and specifically also to management technology. Next slide, please. So this is just a very brief recap, but I think it fits well with the possible research topic discussion in NMRG here. Basically, the opportunities and challenges are organized into 4 areas. First one concerns basically aspects that can be taken care of at the device and the equipment level, and challenges and opportunities there. A lot of this has to do with what do we need for instrumentation, how do we certify and do compliance assessment for devices and so forth. And actually the document contains in greater detail a lot of those things outlined. But in the interest of time, go to the next slide, please. The second aspect concerns the network as a whole. This is perhaps where the bulk, I guess, of the classical challenges lie here. Basically, networks can be optimized for a number of things, and basically in the context of sustainability and green, basically network optimization extends to that. How can you basically make it pollution aware and essentially optimize on the various green and sustainability type of parameters? And there are, of course, all kinds of research topics associated with this. You can apply AI and machine learning methods. You have applicability of game theoretic approaches, and so forth. So you see basically a rundown of some of the topics here. Again, for details, refer to the draft. Next one. At the protocol level, and this is of course of particular interest for work that we want to potentially transition to the IETF, is basically what would be some of the protocol enablers for network, for some of the network energy saving mechanisms. For instance, a lot of discussion concerns, for instance, energy proportionality, and taking, for instance, resources offline or online and so forth. Basically, to enable these things, we would require mechanisms for fast discovery, fast state reconvergence, and so forth. There are questions around protocol adaptation, where depending on the characteristics of the transmission media, you would want to, for instance, have exploit whether traffic is bursty or smoothed, or whether it can be done so in order to save transmission energy, and so forth. And a few other topics, again, which you see here. Next one. And then finally, basically at the architecture level is basically how you take an even higher level, basically, and look at how would you actually organize networking applications, taking into account not just the network itself, but also aspects such as where would you place your computation placement. So basically things such as content delivery network from an energy perspective. Some of the topics that are being discussed in COIN and so forth would fit into this area. Next. So, well, regarding the document, we are revising the document. There are a few comments which have been received, which we still need to incorporate. We also would like to solicit more comments, of course, on the document. We would also want to mention that basically there's a companion draft in Ops AWG concerning green metrics, basically addressing the instrumentation side of things. Next one. And then regarding the topic on feedback on greenness NMRG topic, which was one of the items which were asked on the mailing list, there was a question, what types of further contributions could we work on NMRG? And I believe actually there are many topics where you can also see, well, perhaps also publication more in IEEE type of journals and so forth. But I think in terms of here, this would be work that is perhaps closer again to work that can be transitioned eventually to interoperability protocol things and so forth. Some of the items that come to mind are carbon telemetry. How can we basically assess the footprint of a communication service, including all factors? How would we, for instance, snapshot carbon telemetry along a path? How would we collect that? This would be basically something, a question, how can we extend and build on existing mechanisms that we have and perhaps improve them? Second aspect concerns, again, the network carbon optimization is a use case for AI that will also allow us to tie the two subjects together, because AI is another big topic complex that we have here in NMRG. This concerns everything from optimizing paths to optimizing function placements, etc. Then the third one concerns basically what mechanisms would help some of the schemes that energy saving mechanisms would need. So again, this is the aspect, would be, for instance, should we retain certain states to facilitate fast rediscovery and reconversion as we take resources offline and bring them back, and those sorts of things. And then finally, also we have a topic on intent-based networking. So clearly one could also imagine basically that there are going to be some control norms that would allow users or network operators to navigate the trade-offs that they would potentially have to make between between sustainability on one hand and other purposes in the network, such as utilization and so forth on the other hand. And I think this concludes what I have.
Thank you, Alex.
Comments, questions?
Yeah. Questions, comments on what Alex has presented in the, of course, in the draft, but also more in general as he presented at the end on the topic for the group.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Alex. So maybe as some additional remarks that or comments that have been already raised by Alex, and actually as he sent on the mailing list, so you will see some overlap with what we prepare for the topic discussion. So you will see, of course, some topics that he mentioned, for example, carbon telemetry. But what we have also...
Sorry, you're very quiet. Can you talk right into the mic?
Oh, okay. Thank you. Yeah, so what I was saying, we received also some more comments and proposed topic on the mailing list that you can see here regarding the data models and instrumentation also to assess carbon footprint. The coupling with AI that you already mentioned. Also, so someone also mentioned what would be the impact of green networking and network management, in the sense that if we have some, let's say, green networking operations that, for example, like switch off some device, switch on, it might also impact, indirectly the management itself, if the decision has then been taken in a central manner. So it's also a topic that has been proposed. Of course, what is important to mention that was been raised also during the discussion is that you may be aware of the AAB impact program. That also is about this sustainability topic and green networking. So it will be important to position the role of the group, but it has been highlighted, but also at the IETF, but also regarding what happens in other SDO or communities. Okay, so I don't know if someone still, we can discuss a bit on the green networking topic now, or we can move to the next topic. So yeah, please, Colin.
Yeah. Go ahead, you go first. Go ahead.
So traditionally, green networking has been really abstraction of things, right? In 2023, we've got 46 gigawatts left in US grid. All of this capacity can be claimed today by growth of AI networking, really data centers to run stuff like GPT-4. So from being pretty vague statement, we need to be greener. Unless we get greener next year, there's going to be no power. Here we are.
Okay. So, yeah, thank you for your comment, but generally, yes, I think it's ready for long-term perspective as well.
Hi, Colin Perkins. I mean, you mentioned coordination with the IAB E-Impacts program, and I think that's very important. You also mentioned coordinating with groups in the different IETF areas. I think that this is an area where there's clearly some urgency to develop standards around some of the aspects you have listed here. You know, we clearly urgently need standards to convey your carbon intensity metrics, that sort of thing, so people can build products that make decisions which then actually reduce the energy usage of the networks. Equally, there are clearly longer term research challenges. I would encourage this group to focus on the longer term challenges, and let's make sure the urgent work which needs to happens in the IETF, and the standards get published really quickly, and not spend a long time discussing things in a leisurely way here when we can actually push something through in the IETF very quickly. So yeah, focus this group on the long-term challenges, make sure the short-term stuff goes to the IETF.
Thank you. Alexander.
Just briefly, just a comment to Colin. I agree, and actually, along this line, actually, it's one of the aspects concerns the instrumentation and metrics and so forth. And this is work which we kind of like almost immediately moved into Upside WG. So that is in the IETF already.
Yeah, I mean, what I was having in mind is precisely we're talking about carbon telemetry. Probably we'll be looking for the.
Okay, just a reminder: when you go to the mic, please state your name.
Since I assume that the.
Yeah, but I mean, when people remotely don't know who is speaking, that's
okay. So I stand corrected, and Diego Lopez Telefonica. I was about to say something very similar to what Colin was mentioning about splitting the work, and when they're talking carbon, stay here. When we're talking about energy measurements, go to the ops area. But apart from that, something that we should take into account as well, and this comes from a recent discussion I had reviewing a paper, is that we should not forget about the whole footprint, energy footprint, or the carbon footprint, because some of the methods that we may propose here are going to have their own energy costs. This is something that we tend to forget. Recently, it was a paper in which they were proposing to run a digital twin to evaluate the consumption of an optical network and make some decision on the optical network. In my view, practically running the digital twin were going to cost much more than the energy you were going to save. Having the whole balance and having this in mind is something that is important, just as a reflection.
Thank you for the comments. Nobody else is online? No. Okay. So let's move to the next topics that we have in the group. That is intent-based networking. So yeah, what if I summarize here what we received as feedback, it looks like there is a willingness to have more things regarding IBM in the group. In particular, as I was mentioning, to have more, there was some mention to have more use cases, to have maybe some more focused interim meeting regarding the use cases, and also to progress on other part of the, let's say, IBM research agenda and maybe go beyond what we have currently, I think, written in the charter. So, of course, maybe somehow we had the architecture discussion without real success, so maybe there are some other important topics: mediation, insurance, interfaces, intent representation, model for model and interpretation of intents. So all these have been also proposed during either also the discussion offline or online. Also, maybe this is kind of, let's say, recurrent comments, maybe to also make connection with the IETF and standardization if you are able to identify some killer use case. And maybe also go for example, it has been mentioned here, maybe to go if you want, if you identify some a good use case to go, for instance, for example, to Anima. Yeah, so if you want also to comment, so here, as I said, is really what we received. So if you want to add something or not, at the end of this presentation, we'll go, we'll give some global as well views. So if not, we can continue. Yeah, so next topic is data management. So Nachos, I think you can come and present.
Hi. Well, this is Nacho from Telefonica. So with this presentation, with all this buzz around the AI, managing data is more important than ever. So with this presentation, what I wanted to do here today is to trigger some discussions and bring the latest paradigms that we are seeing in the data landscape today. No? And particularly, these are data fabric and data mesh. No? And we also want to share some ideas on how we are applying these paradigms to network management. Next slide, please. So briefly, this is an overview of these two approaches. First, there's data fabric. Data fabric defines an architecture for data infrastructures. The basic idea is that with this architecture, you are unifying all the data that you have. The data fabric would collect data from heterogeneous sources and integrate it. So this can be, all this data can be exposed through a unified interface. No? And then there's a data mesh. I think you're all very familiar with data mesh. So just to remind you that it's more an organizational approach, a new way of managing your data in an organization based on 4 principles. But the basic idea is that the owners of the data sources are responsible for making this data usable, findable, and trusted for the consumers. No? And we see these two paradigms complementary. We could use the data fabric as the infrastructure that owners of the data can use to build these data products and share them. Next slide, please. So with these two paradigms, what we see now is this not so new technology, which is the knowledge graph. In putting it simple, a knowledge graph, it's basically the representation of concepts related to other concepts in a graph. Okay, and for this, the idea of knowledge graph is to leverage all this work done with ontologies, taxonomies that have been there since the the advent of the semantic web. No? And precisely the idea is to combine all this knowledge with data instances. For knowledge graph, we see two standards today, semantic web, as I said, based on RDF and all. These are very mature technologies, but also with new data stores like Neo4j, property graphs have become quite popular. So in this sense, Etsy has recently started a new standard called NGSILD that is based on property graphs that can also reference ontologies. No? And precisely this is the standard that we are using for the implementation of a knowledge graph. So why knowledge graphs are becoming important again? Because they are considered enablers of the data fabric paradigm. And this is because they enable data integration. And graphs are a flexible structure that allows to accommodate any kind of data, because at the end what we want to do is to connect data from different sources. No? That's the goal of all of this. No? And precisely this data integration is possible through a semantic layer based on this knowledge with ontologies. No? So the work that we are doing is to identify these data sources and see how can we transform this raw data, for example, Yang, into its conceptual representation. This is what is known as semantic lifting. And the proposal that we're doing to align this work with data mesh is that a data product could be this conceptual representation of the data. Because the data product is something that we still need to be clarified. So this is the approach that we are following so far. Next slide, please. This is an example of what we are doing, of this work of translating Yang data, which is our focus for now, back into its conceptual representation. What you see here on the right is the property graph of the NGSILD standard. So what we are doing is we are defining some rules, some mapping rules that map the data that we have modeled in Yang to entities, properties, and relationships with other entities. No, so here we are already facing some challenges. We see that, for example, we have different Yang data models referring to same concepts. Also, we see in the same Yang model, we see different parts of the model referring to same concepts. You see this, for example, in the Yang library, where the concept of a module is referred multiple times in different ways, an implemented module or an imported module, but the concept is the same. So essentially, these are the challenges that we are facing, and we are planning to have an implementation of this and hopefully show something in the upcoming hackathon or in two hackathons. We'll see. Next slide, which will be the end. So some takeaways and future challenges. We see after this that knowledge graphs, in our view, is they are key to unlocking AI, because they facilitate this data integration. As I said before, the goal is to collect data from heterogeneous sources and integrate it so it can be exposed in a unified way to our consumers. And also, we want to make the semantics explicit. So not only humans, but also machines can understand what the data means. We also need to take into account that network telemetry is not only Yang. This is very well highlighted in RFC 9232, which points out that in addition to model-driven telemetry based on Yang, there's also IPFix, BGP, NetFlow, and so on. No? So we need to take this into account when integrating data. Another point is that we believe that the network industry should start looking at ontologies. We think that the network industry is a bit behind compared to other industries like automotive, finance or health, where there are already standard ontologies, they are using them. And to the best of our knowledge, the network industry is a bit behind. So perhaps NMRG could start working on identifying ontologies that we could use as the baseline. And precisely this is the work that we are already doing in IB, where we are identifying which data models are there for the inventory. And in this work, we are trying to identify the core concepts, no? And this is precisely the idea behind building ontologies, no? To define these core concepts and how they relate to each other. We should not overlook the data mesh wave as well. There's already some work in this direction with this Yang and Kafka integration, and perhaps here we should try to define some guidelines for identifying the data domains and how owners of data can be data products. No? And lastly, our plan is to work on drafts, on a draft or based on what we said the other day. In NMRG, we could follow other ways like publications, workshops, in hackathons. But the idea is to start investigating these new data management paradigms. How can they be used in network management? And well, there are many other topics that I have not covered in this presentation regarding data governance, such as data quality, privacy, and so on. So there's a lot of work to do in this scope. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a participant in the queue, so Ahmed.
Hi, Ahmed Al Hassan from Swisscom. So I'm speaking of a bit of experience because build and manage knowledge graph at scale and production before. And this approach I'm a bit worried about, just based on past experience. If I understood correctly here, you want to take everything that is already done, transform it to some ontology, and redefine things again, possibly. This is a huge effort. This is basically redefining everything we have done before in IETF. Also in production, from practical point of view, this is a huge undertaking. And you know, the more transformations you add to the data, the more chances for something to happen that will break. And you know that it's very hard to build trust around the data you produce. So you want to reduce the amount of errors, because if your ontology say there is something wrong with your network, you want that to be the network is actually wrong, not your entire pipeline. So this is my first comment. Second comment, I'm part also for the Kafka integration. This is amazing that we can do it. The third one would be in NetMod, we start discussing maybe we want to open a door for Yang v2 to start evolving now. It's a long project, but I would rather to have the semantics being brought to Yang, so we can run ontologies on top of it or something close to it, maybe not 100%, but rather than transforming the data, we can probably enrich the data that we have and we start working from it, just an alternative approach.
Thank you.
Yeah, Alex, yeah, so maybe also a little bit along the lines of the previous comment. The ontology scares me also a little bit. I think of SID and SimCX and so forth. And probably, I'm not sure actually if this is the right way that we want to go down on this slippery slope. However, that being said, clearly, basically, looking at what could be done with in conjunction with Yang and other data models that we have in IETF to better support AI applications, and then to see what would actually really benefit these things, and then that one could bring back to NetMod and other working groups. I think that would be useful.
Thank you.
Benoit Claes. So I'm going to disagree with you, Alex. So I'm not going to discuss the transformation aspect. I believe that in the end, we're going to have multiple data sources. We want to specifically transform everything. But if I look at the state of the industry right now, we want to do network analytics. So we've been exporting data with telemetry, typically Yang in this case, or IP fix or whatever. And Ahmed mentioned that, yes, you want to get this Kafka integration, you want to keep the semantic up to the end, right? Now, whenever we have data, then after that, we want to have information. What can I extract from that? And if I have in mind the view of self-star, self-configuring, self-feeling, whatever, we want to have symptoms. And I believe the next step is the knowledge graph. And you said it right, that we want to connect information that we have in there. And if we have the end goal of self-star networks, and the end goal that the machine should be doing that for us, then your knowledge graph and the ontology is a necessary step that we have to do by linking the data. However, we're not special in the networking industry. I mean, this has been done in different industries, right? We don't have specific requirements. We just need to apply it to our networking industry. But I believe this is very important, and that's a perfect topic, which is kind of researchy, perfect for NMRG, but that in the end, we'll need to have in production one way or the other.
Thank you.
Diego Lopez, Telefónica. I pushed the button when Ahmed was talking. Then I have seen that Alex and Benoit has more or less clarified things. My belief is that we should not be afraid of certain words like ontology or like knowledge graph, simply because in the past where something very complicated, very much related with heavy things like OWL or RDF, etc., is possible. We need to be able to reason about data and to connect the many different models that we have. We need to do so. And the way of doing so is called an ontology. Then we have to be smart enough to not fall, to avoid falling in the errors in the past. I'm building things that are complex. Well, complex, they are going to be complex. Complicated or heavyweight, etc. But this is up to us, and this is the kind of thing that the kind of things that we're proposing here. We're not proposing reinventing the wheel. Is taking advantage of the wheels we have, and well, putting them to the right pressure so we can move as we can. And that means that is called an ontology. Like it or not, we can invent another word, but this so far is what we have.
Just maybe to react as a participant to these comments. I'm supportive in general to knowledge graph ontologies or even the vision of self-star networks. But my question is, okay, this is not new topics, new research questions, but then are we having new tools, new approaches? I mean, what could be done differently? Because again, if we keep repeating the same thing, we will have the same effect, same results. So what could be made different here as work for the research group to say, okay, we have a bit of not certainty, but hints that the result will be different. Because I see, okay, ontology, it's not new, but then what do we want to do differently this time?
If I may answer, yeah. Yeah, no, in my business, in network industry, I don't think ontologies have been fully exploited, especially the problem that we are seeing in every working group is that we have plenty of data with many young data models, and we want to connect this data. We need it for AI. So as Diego was saying before, it's a matter of reusing existing tools and apply them to what we need now, which is combining this data. No? That's the work that we should focus on.
All right, Ahmed Al-Hassani again. So I just want to clarify something. I'm not against the ontology. I'm not against knowledge graph. That's something we need. No doubt about that. It's about the techniques to reach there. This topic, I've been publishing for over 10 years about it. Do it also in production in a service provider context. The only thing I'm worried about here is to actually get value from these ontologies. We here are putting a requirement, if I understood the slides correctly, that we need to transform everything to this ITSI standards or or OWL or RDF or something like that. I rather to start from what we have already, see what we can add on top of the existing YAG modules we have, that we can get this value and get these use cases as fast as possible. Because it's not about having ontology. That's not the goal. The goal is actually to have a value. You have added value on top of your existing data. And what's this value? What we can do? If you want to do remodeling and have ontology for a POC, that's something you can do in less than a week. But if you're gonna have a real value out of it and prove that it actually works on scale, that's a harder problem to do.
Diego Lopez again. I guess that we are probably we are here in a naming problem. Is that nobody has been talking about remodeling anything. I mean, it's about precisely connecting, being able to connect the models, because right now what we have is hacks to connect the models and to relay them, and it's about trying to avoid those hacks and helping us in a better understanding of what we're doing and how we can do it. So if at the end we end up with a Jan++ that is able to improve semantics, welcome. If we're talking about OntoJang that is able to incorporate ontology, sorry, fine. If we call it a totally different way because it's so revolutionary, well, that's the idea. I mean, we're talking about the challenges, right? So we are exploring the challenges.
Yeah, just a bit of a remark, maybe not necessarily in contradiction to a working group, but in a research group, we don't need to have consensus. It's totally normal for research to explore different paths. So, for instance, what Hamed was saying or Nacho, and present the results. And the idea is we don't need to, at least at some point in the research group, it's good to be skeptical and try to explore different paths. That said, we have also an issue that we can also try to concentrate our effort and work together. So, okay, to explore different paths, but from a research group in terms of progress, at some point we need also to maybe try to move the community forward.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. So yes, as additional, let's say, comments. So it's good that we have already a lot of discussion regarding the presentation before, but of course we received also a set of additional comments during the discussion. So here you see a full list. I will not enter too much into the detail, but you have we had a lot of discussion on two things. Also, one was regarding the quality of data that we are using, that we need for more qualitative data, in particular for AI, but not only for AI. So probably there is some work to explore in this area as well. How to evaluate the quality of data, how to collect more qualitative data from the beginning, meaning that, for example, if you know what you will do with data, maybe you can collect data that are more suitable from the beginning. Although there was a lot of discussion, but it was quite a recurrent topic as well on dataset, availability of dataset. So from a research perspective, it's important to have dataset to work on. So there was some discussion. So here there are some, let's say, a proposition. It's not only specific to NMRG, so we should maybe combine with other communities. there was some proposition to not, even if not goal is not, our goal is not really to provide data set, but at least maybe maintain a catalog of data sets, and also have explaining some limitation of some existing data sets, lessons learned when you use some data sets. It's important to share with others, because I think many of us using data, and when you use data, you learn something about the data itself. It's important to share, for example, if you use a public data set with others as well. So it can be also a good, an emerging good place for that. Okay, and again, we have this comment. If you want now to go more with, to make some connection with the standardization part, there was some suggestion as well. You can also more globally open the mic on the mic on the data management part if you want. So if there is any comment on that. If not, we can move to next slide. So thank you, Laurent. So then we have also the topic of artificial intelligence. So here, if I can summarize the comments that we received, that we have, so we have a first group document that is that is quite stable, and the idea that we have that we received is now maybe took some to take some challenges from this document and work on these challenges. Of course, if you want to work in challenges globally on a challenge, you need also some use case. So that was the idea of what we received. So here are different topics that have been proposed from the challenge that we have already in challenges, like that we have already, let's say, documented challenges, like the problem of the distributed AI, some problem related to explainability, and so on and so on. And although there are some suggestions regarding deployment and implementation when you are using AI, also like before you use data set, you can provide some lessons learned. When you use some maybe AI tools, AI processing pipeline, you can also share the lessons learned from that perspective. Okay, we can go to next slide, please. Now. So maybe before we go to general remarks, maybe there are some also comments on AI topic in the group. Yeah.
Hi, Colin Perkins. Sorry, I should have joined the queue. Some of this seems quite similar to the previous topic. So it would be good to make sure we understand the differences, and if there are fundamental differences, or if this is one topic where things should be brought together, and we should be trying to find connections.
Yeah, I personally agree. Actually, let's say we have in the AI topic before, we have already the data, let's say, management part, but it seems that with discussion it goes a bit beyond. So maybe I think it's your point is really relevant. We have to see exactly what are the exact differences or the commonalities to put some of that. But even, of course, there is some interaction. But agree. So general remarks. So again, it's what we received the feedback from the participant. So all people say NMRG should continue because the question was asked in my question when I sent it. People also, in addition to the topic we are addressing in the, let's say, in the roadmap of the group, to have the NMRG as an open forum when they want to share new ideas. So I really appreciate that. Most of the participants who answer say we should also reinforce connection with other research group, working group, and SDOs. Next slide. Regarding types of contribution outcomes, there have been different views. So first of all, a lot of people that we have to write drafts and ultimately to RC, but we just not always. It's good to articulate the different research questions we are addressing in the group. Also, people highlight that it's good because they are visible on the data tracker when they write the draft. So it's like presentation, of course, also available in in the material of the different meetings. But at least when you have the draft, it's good for visibility as well, and it's a good tool to transition, for example, to working group. But of course, drafts are not the only production of the group. So people were mentioning brainstorming session, also practical work, coding, participation to hackathon, that can be good before the draft itself, and also technical presentation as we, for those who are familiar with NMRG, as we are doing regularly already. But also what has been mentioned, it can be collided with numerous academic workshops that we have. So we have really to maybe focus on some particular topics that are in scope of what we are doing in the group. Next slide. Yes, Colin, you want to add something?
Yeah, Colin Perkins. So, I mean, just on the topic of drafts versus other ways of publishing. You know, I mean, drafts are a perfectly reasonable way of organizing work, and you know, a lot of research groups do publish RFCs. Equally, the focus should be on research, and research should be of a publishable quality. So, you know, while drafts and RFCs are useful, consider also whether the focus should be on papers and published outputs. And you know, most research groups do both. You know, think about the balance.
Thank you. Can go next slide. You can skip this one. Okay, so it's time for maybe the concluding remarks. So this maybe the slides now.
Just if you allow me, Jean, because we have also some comments, let's say, on the chat. So I'm just relaying what Dan was conveying in the chat of the Meet-Echo, that he's a bit confused about how we use the term AI in the group. Whether when we say AI, we refer to machine learning, or let me quote. Still unclear how we use AI here. Is it outrageous to say?
I'm here.
Okay, yeah, I wasn't.
Because I'm new in the working group, I don't want to distract or derail the thing. I'm confused when we mention AI versus machine learning in the context of network management. I think we refer to machine learning instead of AI, but am I at the right place saying that?
Yeah. Okay. So I think
they're not mutually inclusive as well. Some computer science.
We are, to be honest, personally, I think we are talking a lot about machine learning, but it's not the only AI. And no, actually, yes, it's the goal of this meeting and the follow-up, because it's not the end of the discussion, will be precisely to define what we want to do with AI in our research group. And maybe it will restrict to machine learning, but at that time, I will not, let's say, restrict to any particular area. Diego?
No time to push the button, Diego Lopez. In particular, now what you mentioned this, I remember there is a draft that appeared as co-authors for some discussions. It's from a Japanese, two people from that work from NICT in Japan, and they advocate that it's not only about machine learning. They're interested in exploring as well rule-based systems, and in some cases, you know. In some cases, when we're talking about capturing expert knowledge, etc., is something that, I mean, has been used in the past, and it might be that in some cases it could make sense. Just as a note, I mean, I would use the word AI, and that, in my view, includes machine learning, and not necessarily it's limited to machine learning.
Is it fair to say if we're talking about open loop or learning and predict something is more machine learning, and if we're taking an action, it's more AI? So if we distinguish these two, because I'm coming from the AI side, now I can follow the thread.
All right. I try to be nice. All right. For AI, I'd like to keep it open. AI, because again, what the best AI to use here is also part of the research, I guess. And to echo Colin a bit, and this is like more like a general remark from what I observed from the two NMRGs and the side meeting, it seemed that the format that we are having here is more about to discuss the research ideas and to bring them. It doesn't have the same rigorous format of a workshop or a conference where you actually have to bring data, prove your method works. It's fine, it's okay, it's acceptable, but you know, it just food for the thought. And I'm not sure if you want to make it more rigorous. I think it's good to have it open so people can discuss early on ideas and maybe later publish it here or somewhere else as well.
Yeah, this is Alex Clem. Yeah, I just wanted to also mention that I would want to see this AI. I see AI more broadly than just machine learning, and I see actually many applications beyond just machine learning, particularly in the network management space.
Okay, thank you for your comments. So maybe let's move on to go back to the slide. So here are more the chair's view now after we analyze a bit the output of the discussion that we had in the side meeting and by email. So other things, thanks a lot for the inputs because we received a lot of constructive input. It was very nice discussions that we had. So you propose a lot of things. At some time you said that we have to keep focused. So, so it's a bit antagonist, yeah. But also as chair, we have to say that we need to define priorities. We cannot tackle all what has been proposed. Of course, this is the idea of the today's meeting, but also of the next let's say interim meeting and discussions that we have. Really to define these priorities, but keep NMRG as well as an open forum with our new ideas. Next slide, please. Okay, so in terms of type of contribution, I think it was already a bit said in different meetings and discussion. We are not specifically focusing on drafts. We are not specifically focused on presentation. The all types of contribution are fine. It's not the same effort to have it. So yes, if somebody prefer to go first with code and presenting some demo, it's fine as well. If you prefer to have a further draft to have something visible on data trackers and present the work, it's fine. If you have already published a paper and you want just to present it again, it's fine as well. Yes, regarding the connection with other groups and SDO, I think we can encourage in the early stage if you present something and somebody identifies that could be interesting for the standardization point of view. Yes, if there is this possibility, but it's not mandatory. Because we are a research group, but if at some point somebody identifies somebody has proposed something that could lead to some standardization, okay, that's good. But it's not mandatory. Of course, we are really relying also on your implication, not only in the IETF, but also in other organizations or communities, because we need also the help of participants to make the difference, let's say, connection or liaison and so on. So, okay, so yeah. Please next slide, Laurent. So regarding the different topics, so I will not go back on network digital twin. It was the goal of the other session. The other topics. So first on green networking, in our views, it's not really clear what will be our role yet. So we will run interim meeting to maybe find a possible agenda if we are able to find it. Although it's important that the participant commit to dedicate some effort, but also it has to be done in the context of the IEP program. So we have to liaise with the IEP program to have something current within within also the IETF and other research group. Regarding IBM, okay, we receive a lot of inputs again. So people seems to want to continue to work on IBM, but we do not receive so far so many contributions in the last, let's say, meetings. So yes, we will really encourage people first working on use case to discuss together and provide a plan for NMRG, what they want to do with the use cases. Okay, if other wants to work on other aspect IBM, same, please provide contribution. Maybe I want to present some ideas, some technical presentation. But yeah, our observation is that there is not so much contribution proposed in the last, let's say, I would say, meetings. So our proposition here is that if you don't receive any more contribution, substantial contribution regarding IBM by the IETF 117, we'll suppose that IBM is the IBM topic is ended in the NMRG group. Regarding AI, I think what has been highlighted is that now we have the challenge document, so now we can focus on some specific challenge. So of course, I think it's a bit related to what I did say before. We can explore different things, but it's be good as a research to have a focus effort on some challenges. So we will have also, we plan also an interim meeting to really define the challenges that as a collective effort we would like to tackle. Yeah, okay. And for data management as well, we will have the same approach to have the dedicated meeting because as you have seen, there are a lot of discussion for these two topics. Just to remember, NMRG is a research group. So it's for research, long-term research. So we want to insist that every contribution done that you would like to do at the NMRG, you must clearly state what is the research question. What is the type of contribution at the end? If it's a draft, it's a presentation, we should understand what is the research question. And if you go for a draft and you want to be adopted by the group, one criteria I just want to remind that is that we need to have a clear research question that is stated. And maybe a bit strict on that in the next month and so again, the research scope is very too ambitious. What you have proposed is very nice, but I don't think we have resources to copy all of that, so we have to be very focused. And yes, as has been proposed, we will, as chair, make effort to organize more frequently interim meeting as we had a bit in the past. Okay, and we will also identify people because we have topics, but we need people to work on topics. I think we do not have time to discuss.
We're already over time, but we can continue the discussion after. And maybe Colin, you have some word of conclusion you want to share?
Yeah, hi, Colin Perkins. Can you hear me? Yeah. So, first of all, this has been a really good exercise. I'm actually really impressed by the amount of discussion and feedback you got here, and the amount of energy this shows still being in the group, which has been running for a very long time now. So I think that's really impressive. I like the focus on research questions and clearly identifying that the research to be done on all of the items. I think that's good, and we'll make sure that the group stays as a research group and doesn't drift into doing standards by another name. I think as we discussed with myself and the chairs over lunch, that there's a lot of good stuff here, but the scope is maybe getting a bit broad. And I would encourage you to think about which items are getting to be done, and make sure that they're done and the work gets concluded and finished. And the group's scope doesn't keep continually expanding. Make sure the work actually concludes and achieves its goals, or is explicitly or you explicitly say, yeah, we're not making progress here. Don't just leave things in scope forever. That said, there's good work here. There's good stuff. Just keep it a little bit focused, and I think you're doing well. So great. I think this is really good.
Thank you, Colin. Appreciate it. And thanks to all the participants online, remotely on the mailing list, and on site for all the inputs, the side meeting also. And the group exists because you are there. So we are just here to support and enable. Thank you. We are sorry for running over time, but thanks for staying with us.
Thank you very much.